Hi, this video is about the Porophyllum Gracile plant. It's commonly known as slender poreleaf or odora. It's a low desert scrub plant found here in southern Arizona. It's not a plant you pay much attention to. Maybe you'd pay more attention to it if they all look like the specimen shown here from the World Botanical Associates page, but of all the time I've been here in southern Arizona, I've not seen one nearly in such good shape. They kind of look like mostly a ball of sticks. The kind you'd chop out when you're cleaning up the yard without a second thought. Even such a nice plant as this one in full bloom isn't very noticeable because it has such tiny flowers and the whole thing is mostly colorless mess. We're going to do some focus stacking with the extreme macro rig on various parts of this plant because it is way more interesting than it looks to the naked eye. This video is mostly about my closer look at this plant. One of the first things I learned when trying to figure out what the plant was that I was about ready to cut out and now take a closer look at was that it contains pores that give off a unique scent. If I take any of the green bits on this plant and you crush it in your fingers, it smells like a sweet petroleum and has the slightest hint of black pepper, at least to me. This probably explains the common name odora, and also why the rabbits and birds do not touch this. I have a lot of rabbits in my yard. They will not eat any of this. Also, I learned that the Native Americans use this plant for various medicinal purposes, and so whatever chemical creates that sweet petroleum smell must be useful for what ails you. Recently, while doing some yard work, I ran across this very small one. See, the leaves are about 1 millimeter or 2 in diameter. Here's what they mostly look like, just little balls of sticks. But if you look closer, you'll see that there are green shoots on the ends of them. Here's a dying flower bundle that's just starting to open. And here's a fully formed dandelion type pappus with the seeds and their little associated sails. Here's a focus stack that I did with my 1:1 macro lens of the flower in full bloom. The whole flower bundle, I guess, is called an inflorescence. Zooming in a bit, you can see that each flower is a 5-sided floret. For those of you that like cross-eyed stereo, you can pause this and have at it. Here's a focus stack at 20 power on my extreme macro rig of one of the tips, and you can see it's just loaded with little white pollen. The pollen spheres are about 200 microns in diameter. It's really amazingly beautiful. Here's a focus stack with my 1:1 macro of a fully formed pappus. The 5-sided star, I think they're called filaries, and they wrap the whole flower bundle in fruiting bodies, and then they open up to expose the seeds and their sails. Here's a closer look at the ends of the sails, and they have these little hollow tubes, so there must have been some part of the flower that was above these little sails that just breaks off before it lets go. And then here's a focus stacked extreme macro at 5 power of that little hollow tube at the end. For what it's worth, you can also see that the little strands are very hairy. Good geometry to catch the wind. Here's one seed and its sail. Again, a focus stack with the regular 1:1 macro. And then I had to take a closer look at the very tip, the left, which looks like a spike that will dig down into the dirt or between the rock or whatever to anchor it when it finally hits the ground. And I really wanted to take a closer look. And so here's a focus stack at 20 power. On the left is kind of like an arrow type structure with a flange around it so that once it gets down into the soil, it's going to be hard to pull it back out. And then along the shaft, you can see these little hairs that also look like they're designed to make sure that once it gets into the dirt, it's really hard to pull it back out because you'll be pulling against the direction of these hairs. So that's my close look at Porophyllum Gracile. Maybe you found it interesting. Take care.